My name is Jolene Bassett. I'm 24 years old. 2 months ago, I came home from a weekend work trip to find my bedroom door open, my bed replaced with a dog crate the size of a small car, and my closet emptied into 3 garbage bags sitting in the hallway. My dresser was gone. My bookshelf was gone. The quilt my grandmother made me before she passed was folded on top of the garbage bags like an afterthought. My parents had given my bedroom to my sister Adrienne's French bulldog, Napoleon. A dog. They gave my room to a dog. When I stood in the hallway staring at 3 bags of my entire life, my mother came up the stairs and said, "Don't start, Jolene. Napoleon has allergies. He needs a room with the window unit. Adrienne can't keep him in her room because of the carpet. You can sleep on the pull-out in the basement." The basement, where the furnace rattles all night and the ceiling leaks when it rains. I looked at my father. He shrugged. "It's just a room, Jolene. You're never here anyway." But what my parents didn't know was that 2 weeks earlier, my grandfather, my father's own father, had called me into his study and handed me an envelope that would change my life forever. Inside was a trust document, a property deed, and a letter explaining exactly why he was giving me, and only me, an inheritance worth $1.2 million. Before I tell you what was in that envelope and what happened when my family found out, please like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from and what time is it there? I love hearing from all of you. Now, let me take you back to where this all started. Growing up in Beaumont, Texas, I learned early that in the Bassett household, the rules were simple. Adrienne came first. I came when there was room. My family. Dad, Gene, a mid-level manager at a petroleum company who spent his weekdays avoiding decisions and his weekends avoiding conflict. Mom, Donna, a woman whose entire identity revolved around her older daughter's happiness and whose approach to parenting me could be summed up in one phrase: "You'll be fine." My sister Adrienne, 27, the firstborn, the golden child, the one who got the bigger room, the newer car, the better everything. And me, Jolene, the low-maintenance one, the one who never complained, the one who was always told she'd be fine, until being fine became the only option anyone gave me. Adrienne got the spotlight. I got the leftovers. When I was 11, I made the select soccer team. Tryouts were brutal. 60 girls, only 18 made it. I came home glowing, holding the letter ready to celebrate. Mom glanced at it, said, "Good for you, sweetie," and then spent the next 40 minutes on the phone with Adrienne's dance instructor rescheduling a recital. Dad was watching SportsCenter. He gave me a thumbs up without looking away from the screen. That weekend, they drove Adrienne 2 hours to a dance competition and forgot to sign my soccer registration form. I missed the first 3 practices. The coach almost gave my spot away. I told myself it was an honest mistake. Parents forget things. It happens. At 16, I got my first job. Cashier at a hardware store, 15 hours a week. I saved every paycheck. By the end of junior year, I had $4,200 in a savings account I'd opened myself. When Adrienne's car needed a new transmission, Mom asked if I could help out. Not asked, told. "Your sister needs her car for work, Jolene. You can ride the bus." I gave them $2,800. They never paid it back. Adrienne never thanked me. I told myself it was what family did. At 20, I was working full-time at a logistics company while taking night classes to finish my degree. Adrienne had quit her 3rd job in 2 years and moved back home. My parents converted the guest room into a wellness space for her. New paint, a yoga mat, an essential oil diffuser that cost $200. When I asked if I could use the guest room on weekends I came home to visit, Mom said, "That's Adrienne's space now, honey. The pull-out works just fine for you." The pull-out. Always the pull-out. Always the afterthought. Always just fine. I told myself that once I finished my degree and got fully on my feet, it wouldn't matter anymore. That I'd build my own life, and the imbalance would fade into the background. I was almost right. But then Napoleon moved in. Adrian had bought Napoleon 8 months earlier, spending $4,500 on a French bulldog she saw on Instagram. She couldn't really afford him. She was between jobs again, living at home rent-free, but my parents covered the deposit because Adrian needed something to lift her spirits. Napoleon was, by all accounts, a sweet dog. He was also a dog with chronic skin allergies, a sensitive stomach, and a snoring problem that could rattle windows. Within a month, Adrian decided Napoleon couldn't sleep in her room because his dander was getting into her carpet and triggering her own allergies. The same allergies that had never once been mentioned before she needed an excuse. So my parents made a decision. While I was away for a weekend work conference, 48 hours, that's all I was gone, they gutted my bedroom and turned it into Napoleon's suite. New orthopedic dog bed where my twin mattress used to be. A stainless steel water station where my nightstand had been. The window AC unit that had been mine for 6 years, now cooling a room designed for a 30-pound dog with a smashed face and a snoring problem. They moved my things, my clothes, my books, the framed photo of me and my grandmother, the shoebox of keepsakes I'd had since childhood, into 3 black garbage bags and left them in the hallway like trash waiting for pickup. They didn't call me. They didn't text. They didn't ask. When I found those bags in the hallway, when I opened my bedroom door and saw a dog crate where my bed should have been, and a monogrammed water bowl with Napoleon printed in gold script where my shoes used to sit, something cracked open inside me that had been splitting for years. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I stood in that hallway, looked at the garbage bags holding everything I owned in that house, and felt a calm settle over me that I'd never experienced before. It was the calm of finally understanding that nothing I did would ever be enough. That there was no amount of patience, no amount of sacrifice, no amount of being fine that would make them see me as equal to Adrian. They had chosen a dog over me. Not metaphorically, literally. I picked up my bags. I loaded them into my car. My mother called from the kitchen, "Jolene, don't be dramatic. It's just a bedroom." I didn't answer. I drove to the only person who had ever made me feel like I wasn't an afterthought. My grandfather, Walter Bassett, lived in a ranch house on 42 acres outside of Lumberton, about 20 minutes from Beaumont. He was 78 years old, a retired petroleum engineer, and the most quietly observant person I've ever known. Grandpa Walt didn't say much, but when he spoke, it mattered. He'd built his career over 40 years in the oil fields, invested wisely, and lived modestly in the house he and my grandmother had shared for 51 years before she passed. I showed up at his door at 9 o'clock at night with 3 garbage bags and mascara on my cheeks. He opened the door, looked at the bags, looked at my face, and said, "Bedroom?" I almost laughed. "How did you know?" "Because I know my son, and I know what he married." He held the door open. "Come in. Guest room's made up. Has been for a while." That sentence broke me. Has been for a while. He'd been expecting this. He'd been waiting for the moment his granddaughter showed up with nowhere to go, and he'd prepared for it the way he prepared for everything. Quietly, practically, without fanfare. That night, over coffee at his kitchen table, Grandpa Walt told me things I'd never heard before. "Jolene, I've watched your parents for 27 years. I watched Gene become the kind of man who takes the path of least resistance every single time. And I watched Donna turn your sister into a project and you into a footnote." "You never said anything." "I said plenty. To your father. Years ago when you were about 12. Told him he was making a mistake, favoring one child over the other. He told me I was old-fashioned and that I didn't understand their parenting style." Walt took a sip of his coffee. "Their parenting style, as if neglect is a philosophy." He set down his mug and looked at me. 2 weeks ago, I updated my estate plan. My lawyer's been after me for months to finalize things, and I finally did. I want to show you something." He stood and walked to his study, came back with a manila envelope. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a trust instrument, dated 2 weeks prior, establishing the Walter Bassett Family Trust. The second was a property deed for the 42-acre ranch, the house, and 2 adjacent parcels Walt had purchased over the years. The third was a letter. The trust named me, Jolene Bassett, as the sole beneficiary of the real estate holdings. The property had been appraised 6 months earlier. Combined value? $1.2 million. I couldn't breathe. Grandpa, this is… Why? Because you earned it. Not with money, with character. I've watched you work since you were 16. Watched you save. Watched you give your sister $2,800 you'd earned yourself and never complain when she didn't pay it back. I watched you take night classes while working full-time. I watched you show up at this house every other Sunday to mow my lawn and fix my gutters, while your sister posted pictures of a $4,000 dog on the internet. He leaned forward. Your parents gave your room to a dog, Jolene. A dog. And you didn't scream. You didn't beg. You picked up your bags and drove here. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength your grandmother had. And she'd want you to have this. The letter was from him. Handwritten, 3 pages. I won't share all of it, but one part stays with me every day. You were never the afterthought, Jolene. You were the one I was watching the whole time. Everything I built so that someone with your heart would carry it forward. Don't let them take this from you. Don't let them guilt you into sharing it. This is yours because you are worthy of it. Period. I read that letter 4 times before I could see through the tears. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved into Grandpa Walt's guest room permanently. He insisted. I insisted on paying rent. He insisted louder, in that gravelly voice that meant the conversation was over. We compromised. I took over the grocery shopping, the yard work, and Sunday dinners. We fell into a rhythm that felt more like home than anything I'd ever known. Mornings, I'd make coffee for both of us. His black, mine with too much cream. And we'd sit at the kitchen table going over bills or property maintenance or whatever needed doing that week. He started teaching me how the ranch worked. The fencing schedule, the grazing lease he had with a neighboring cattle rancher that brought in $2,400 a month, the property tax obligations, the timber rights on the north parcel. If you're going to own this land, you need to know how it works, he said. Not on paper, in the dirt. He wasn't just giving me an inheritance, he was preparing me to steward it. Evenings, I studied. I was 4 courses away from finishing my degree, and for the first time, I had a quiet house, a stable roof, and someone who asked about my assignments instead of asking me to do the dishes. Grandpa Walt would sit in his recliner with a Western novel while I worked at the dining table, and sometimes he'd look up and say, "You remind me of your grandmother right now. She used to study at that same table. Same look on her face." I didn't tell my parents about the inheritance. Not yet. There was nothing to tell them. It was mine, legally and completely, held in a trust they had no access to and no claim on. But word has a way of traveling in families, especially when lawyers are involved. 6 weeks after I moved out, my father called me. His voice had that careful, controlled tone he used when he wanted something. "Jolene, I got a call from Dad's lawyer. Something about an estate update. He said you were named in some documents. That's between me and Grandpa. He's 78, Jolene. I need to know if he's making sound decisions. That property is supposed to stay in the family." "It is staying in the family, Dad. It's staying with me." Silence. A long one. "What exactly did he give you?" "Everything." The silence that followed was different, heavier. I could hear him recalculating, not the money but me. Recalculating the daughter he'd dismissed, the one who slept on pullouts, the one who was never here anyway, the one whose room they'd given to a dog. "That property is worth over $1 million, Jolene." 1.2, actually. I've seen the appraisal. "And he gave it all to you? Not split between you and Adrian?" "Adrian wasn't in the will, Dad. Neither were you." He hung up. Within 24 hours, the calls started. Mom first at 7 in the morning. "Your grandfather is confused. He doesn't know what he's doing. We need to sit down and talk about this as a family." I could hear Adrian in the background coaching her. "Tell her it's not fair. Tell her Grandpa would want it split equally. Then Adrian herself 4 hours later. This is insane, Jolene. I'm his granddaughter too. You can't just take everything because you mow his lawn and make him coffee. That's manipulation. The irony of Adrian, who hadn't visited Grandpa Walt in over a year and couldn't name his doctor or his favorite meal, accusing me of manipulation was almost impressive. Then Mom again that evening, her voice sharper now. If you don't share this with your sister, you're tearing this family apart. You're being selfish, and your father is devastated. Devastated. My father, who shrugged when they gave my room to a dog, was now devastated because his daughter had something he couldn't control. I didn't argue with any of them. I let each call go to voicemail after the first sentence. Then I texted a single message to the family group chat. Grandpa is of sound mind. His lawyer has confirmed everything. The trust is irrevocable. This is not a discussion. My father drove to Grandpa Walt's house the next day. I wasn't there, but Walt told me exactly what happened. Gene walked in, sat at the kitchen table, and told his own father that he was being manipulated. Walt listened. Then he said, Gene, you gave your daughter's bedroom to a dog. You let Donna turn Jolene into the family doormat for 24 years. You never once stood up for her. Not once. And now you're sitting in my kitchen telling me I'm the one who's confused? He pointed at the door. You want to fight this? Get a lawyer. You'll lose. I made sure of it. My father left without another word. Aunt Patrice, Dad's sister, who'd kept her distance from the family for years, called me a week later. Jolene, I just heard. I want you to know, your grandfather told me about this months ago. He asked my opinion. I told him he was making the right call. You're the only one in this family who ever treated him like a person instead of an inheritance. My cousin Derek texted, Grandpa Walt always said you were the one who reminded him of Grandma. Now I see why. That was 2 months ago. Today I live with my grandfather. I'm 24 years old, employed full-time, finishing my degree online, and the sole beneficiary of a trust worth $1.2 million. I haven't touched the money. I don't plan to, not until Grandpa Walt decides how he wants the property managed going forward. For now, I mow the lawn, cook Sunday dinners, and sit with him on the porch while he tells me stories about my grandmother. Adrian still lives at home. Napoleon still has my old bedroom. Mom still thinks I'm being selfish. Dad still hasn't apologized. My mother sent one more message, about 3 weeks ago. It said, I hope you're happy, Jolene. You've torn this family apart. I wrote back, You gave my room to a dog, Mom. The family was torn long before I left. She didn't respond. I don't hate them. I want to be clear about that. I think my parents are people who got comfortable with a system that worked for them. Adrian got everything. I got nothing. And nobody had to feel guilty because I never complained. When I stopped being convenient, they didn't know what to do with me. They still don't. Forgiveness might come someday. I'm not there yet. But I'm not bitter either. Bitterness would mean they still have power over me. They don't. Grandpa Walt said something last Sunday that I keep turning over in my mind. We were sitting on the porch, watching the sun go down over the property, and he said, Jolene, most people spend their whole lives waiting for the people who hurt them to apologize. Don't do that. Build something. Build it right here. And if they come around, fine. If they don't, you'll still have the land, the house, and a life you built yourself. He's right. He's always been right. If you're watching this and you're the invisible one in your family, the one who gives and never gets, the one who's always told to be fine, I want you to hear me. You are not invisible. You're just surrounded by people who forgot to look. And the moment you stop waiting for them to see you, the moment you start building something of your own, everything changes. Not because they finally wake up, because you do. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Have you ever been overlooked by your family and found your worth somewhere unexpected? I'd love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. Until next time, remember, you were never the afterthought. You were the foundation. And foundations don't crumble, they hold.